What stops you from being able to fall asleep easily at night, especially if you're struggling with long term insomnia and sleep problems? This is part two of this video series that I wanted to record about these different things that might actually stop you being able to fall asleep initially at night. So, the first part of the video series was all about physical components. So, when I look at clients and helping them to overcome their long term insomnia and sleep problems, we break it down in practical ways. And physical components, emotional components, and mental components, meaning the way your mind works, the thought patterns you have, all play a role in your ability to be able to really transition from the daytime to the nighttime and therefore fall asleep in an easy way. So, when we look at these different practical things, every single person has a slightly different combination. And that's why I wanted to record these separate videos, because who you are as a person is going to be relating back to which parts of these things are playing a role in your inability to be able to fall asleep in an easy way. So, in today's video, we're going to talk about emotions. We're going to talk about how you might be emotionally charged and what ways you can actually bring down any heightened emotions that might show up as you want to fall asleep but you're unable to do so. Now, before we go into the main topic of today's video, as always, I wanted to welcome you back if you're part of my community already. If you're brand new, then I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Beatrix Schmidt. I'm a sleep coach, a professional speaker, and the creator of the Sleep Skills for Life program, which is very much my way of helping people like you who have been struggling with sleep problems for a longer period of time but haven't managed to figure out how to overcome it yet. There are lots of different things people try and test, and I am sure that you've also experimented with lots of different things over the years or over the period of time that you have struggled. But developing sleep skills means that you're putting in place the appropriate things for your situation so that they can support you for many years to come and not have mediocre or bad sleep continuously for weeks and weeks on end. So now that we've talked about how I work with people, let's turn our attention back to the second part of this video series. So all about emotions. Now, if you're struggling to fall asleep in an easy way, and let's define it again, just like I did in the first video, what I work with my clients is being able to fall asleep within 15-20 minutes, no matter what happened during the day. And the reason this is important to even define, because everybody has a different definition of what easily means to them. Now, if you can fall asleep in 15-20 minutes, no matter what happened, that shows us that you have the skill set to be able to do that no matter what you might have experienced during the day and no matter what's going on in your life. So that really is why I look at them defining it this way, because easily can mean very different things, and you might be settling for something that does not have to be around in that way. But also falling asleep quickly, especially when it comes to emotions, is not always a good thing. And I mentioned again this in relation to the physical parts in the previous video as well. So let's look at emotions. Now, when it comes to who you are as a person, different people have different personality traits. And what I found over the years working with clients is when a person has more of the personality traits that are linked to being more of an emotional type person, then emotions will play a bigger role in their inability to be able to sleep well at night, whether it's falling asleep or nighttime wakings as well. Now, being more of an emotional type person is absolutely okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Often, what I found with clients is that they just don't know how to work with that part of who they are or work well with them. So, this is a scenario where you might be carrying some of those emotions to bed with you and not even noticing them because that's who you are. That's some of those emotions you experience even during the day. So, how do you even know whether or not this emotional component is relevant to your situation? So, it's a very simple way of discovering it. when you are going to bed or approaching bedtime, climbing into bed and turning the lights off, how do you feel? If you feel nervous going to bed, if you feel frustrated when you can't fall asleep easily, if you have different emotions swirling around as you're even climbing into bed in relation to some of the things that happened or what people might have said, and you feel those emotions, that confirms that emotions are right there playing out in different ways. So, this is where you would then look at either adding this to the physical part that I talked about in the previous video, or simply starting with this part. So even if you have not had any physical lack of relaxation showing up, it can be that the emotions are what is therefore influencing your physicality. When you're emotionally charged or heightened, you're not fully relaxed. Even if you have 10 or 15% nervousness, that's very different than being completely neutral on that emotional scale. So every emotion moves around on a certain scale, positive and negative emotions. Whether or not you're experiencing frustration, that's very little, or it could be very heightened emotion, very heightened nervousness. Every emotion will still sit on the scale, but you just don't know how you can transition yourself to decrease that emotion on that scale that you have. So, this is a practical way I describe it to my clients. And I teach them how to move through an emotional scale so that they don't have to struggle with some of these things that are showing up in the middle of the night. So, if you're feeling these emotions, that confirms to us that you have carried some of these to bed with you, and there is no separation between your daytime and nighttime, and you're not leaving those emotions behind. Now, we're never going to be emotionless or emotion free because that's the way we respond to different things. But what we want to help you do is decrease emotions if they get heightened. So the more heightened an emotion becomes, the less likely it's actually going to allow you to transition into sleep. So one of the first things I want you to look at, if you have confirmed that you're more of this emotional type of dynamic or personality traits, is look at what specific emotions you feel. If you just say, I feel nervous, you're not breaking it down in a way that it can be practically remedied or dealt with. If you feel frustrated, frustration is often too big, and we don't even know what the practical dynamic is. So let me give you an example with frustration. So you can be frustrated because maybe you are not able to fall asleep in an easy way. So that frustration can be based on disappointment. Frustration that's based on disappointment is very different to some of the other types of frustration. So if it's disappointment, then when you establish that it's about that, then you can actually really look at how to decrease that particular emotion. Now, again, I teach clients different ways of what to do with what emotion, because again, emotions are different, the way we deal with them are different. But I'm sure that just by establishing what that is, you're already in a better position to look for appropriate tools and techniques. Another version of frustration can be that, let's say, maybe something is stopping you to be able to fall asleep from an external perspective. So frustration that's linked to maybe your other half snoring, turning around, or even external noise are based on very different type of frustration. It's an externally driven frustration. So it's not generally based on sadness, but it might be based on a different sub emotion. It might be based on, you know, pointing a finger at someone else because they have done something to prevent you. So again, when you look at that, you can really look at how different these two examples are. Externally driven frustration is very different than being upset or sad that you couldn't do something. So once you look at the emotions, it's never about judgment, criticism, or anything. It's about really just figuring out how to then help you to decrease those emotions. Emotions can be decreased through moving yourself to a different place on the emotional scale. And there are many different practical ways to do it depending on the emotion. Some emotions need to be dealt with before you actually climb into bed, because once you're in bed, it's too late to deal with them. Some emotions you can actually do things while you're experiencing them. Maybe, let's say, it's already the lights are off and you're already lying in bed. So not every emotion can be dealt with while you're already in bed. Some of them need to be dealt with beforehand. So when you look at emotions, the conclusion here is to first establish what are the emotions that are playing around and what situations there are. Some of the emotions might be because something you tried didn't work. Something might be externally driven. There are many different things. So that's the first step, is really acknowledging, breaking down the emotion to smaller ways and seeing what plays out for you. That's going to be the best position you will have, so that you can really find the appropriate things to remedy that problem. And one of the other things I suggest to clients when they discover what kind of emotions they have is to look how those emotions play out during the day. Most of the situations I've seen with clients, the emotions are emotions that are also playing out in different ways during the day. And that's almost your standard setting of response. Now, if you know that that happens all the time, that behavior can be changed through changing how you respond to a situation. So this is where it's not just about the emotion, but we might bring in, let's say, a different way of thinking so that the emotion does not end up being so heightened. So I hope that today's video has helped you to figure out what emotions specifically are causing issues, and even figuring out whether or not you are more of this emotional type person that might need to deal with what is showing up for you in the night when you're not able to fall asleep in an easy way. So thank you so much for watching today's video. If you liked the topic today, then hit that like button below. If you haven't yet, then subscribe, hit that little bell as well so I can let you know when I post new videos. And come back next week when we continue to talk about these different things in relation to long-term insomnia and sleep problems, so that you can start looking at your situation in a very practical way.